Now we want to get the Romney campaign's perspective on where things stand. We're joined by Ed Gillespie, senior advisor to Governor Romney. And Ed, welcome back.
Good to be back. Thank you, Chris.
You just heard my conversation with Robert Gibbs, and I want to follow up on one of the points he made. Under their plan, with the Obamacare and the $716 billion, Medicare Part A, which is the hospital insurance part of Medicare, stays solvent until 2024. But if Governor Romney is elected and follows through and repeals Obamacare and takes away the spending cuts and takes away the tax increases, the Medicare trustees say that Part A then becomes insolvent in 2016, only 4 years from now and 8 years earlier. What's Governor Romney going to do about that?
Well, he's going to reform Medicare. That estimate does not assume that there will be any other reforms. And as you know, the Romney-Ryan plan is to save Medicare for future generations by allowing for different options for people. If you're, by the way, below the age of 55, no change for anyone who's currently on Medicare or 55 and above. And the reforms that they would put in place would make Medicare put it on a sustainable footing for as far as the eye can see. And that's an important distinction.
But the problem is that those reforms don't kick in, and that's one of your selling points, until 2023. It doesn't affect any seniors or anybody who's close to being a senior. But that doesn't solve the Medicare Part A problem, which kicks in 2016. So what are you going to do to keep the Part A solvent between 2016 after you've repealed Obamacare and 2023?
Well, Chris, there are other reforms as well. As you know, Governor Romney supports gradually increasing over time, bringing the Medicare eligibility age in line with the Social Security retirement age. Secondly, this Congressional Budget Office notes that these
Would you start that by 2016? Because I thought that was also only kicking in.
It's phased in, but it would extend the solvency. The Congressional Budget Office says that the assumptions about the Medicare Trust Fund Part A being solvent through 2024 under the Obamacare proposal is unrealistic, and that's a fact. What we do know is that, as we heard Robert Gibbs say, they are funding Obamacare by taking $716 billion out of Medicare now, current beneficiaries affected by it. And people who paid into that program for guaranteed health insurance are now seeing that money go to other purposes, and that's wrong. And we welcome this debate, and I think that's why you see Governor Romney, Paul Ryan in Florida yesterday talking about the need to save this for future generations, to repeal Obamacare and restore those cuts and reform it to save it.
Now, let's talk about the governor's long-term solution, and that's what you're talking about, turning it into a premium support plan. But that doesn't start again, I want to point out, till 2023 for people who are now under the age of 55. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office says this. Let's put it up on the screen. Under the proposal, the gradually increasing number of Medicare beneficiaries participating in the new premium support program would bear a much larger share of their health care costs than they would under the traditional or existing program. According to one estimate, Ed, $6,400 in added costs because the premium supports are not going to cover all of their health care costs.
Yeah, that $6,400 estimate, I think, is it's like an assumption. It reminds me a little bit of Steve Martin's book, How to Become a Millionaire. First, you get $1 million. And, you know, this is an assumption of saying, well, we assume that people are going to pay more. If you look, the fact is that allowing for greater competition, by the way, the first choice, the first option in those options for those, again, age below 55, would be to stay in the current Medicare system as is. But the fact is, when you look at where this comes from, the origin of this, it dates back to a Bill Clinton appointed Medicare Saving Commission that was bipartisan, brought forward and in fact was put in a proposal by Ron Wyden and Paul Ryan, because people understand these reforms will make the program more efficient and save it for future generations.
But again, the Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, they're the scorekeeper on Capitol Hill, says that under the premium support plan, that Medicare beneficiaries will bear a much larger share of their health care costs.
Yeah, we reject that in our analysis, Chris, and don't believe that that is accurate.
What about the argument, this is more of a campaign, a political issue, that you hear from some Republicans now, that with all of this focus on the budget and Medicare, that your campaign is getting away from your best issue, which is Obama and the economy and jobs?
Well, as we saw yesterday, in 44 out of the 50 states, unemployment went up. And the economy, jobs, is a very important part of this campaign. And we're going to continue to talk about the Romney-Ryan plan for a stronger middle class, more jobs, more take-home pay. But we also need to do some things in terms of changing business as usual in Washington and trying to get control of our budget and trying to save Medicare for future generations rather than allowing it to go bankrupt. And we want to make sure that voters have a clear understanding of the choices here. We need them to understand, you know, when Nancy Pelosi said we need to pass Obamacare in order for you to learn what's in it, part of what's in it is the $716 billion in Medicare cuts. So we're going to have a debate about all of these issues, and we think a more fulsome debate about the future of Medicare and the Romney-Ryan approach is good for us.
This week, Governor Romney pushed back on the allegations by Senator Harry Reid that he had heard from some unnamed source that Romney had not paid any federal taxes for 10 years. Let's take a look at what Governor Romney said.
Over the past 10 years, I never paid less than 13%. I think the most recent year is 13.6 or something like that.
Question, 13% of what? His gross income or his taxable income?
Adjusted gross income, I believe, is what that was. We said this is his federal income tax, effective federal income tax rate.
So it's of the gross income, because if it's just taxable income, then that doesn't tell us how much he's been able to shelter in the Cayman Islands or Swiss banks or all that.
I believe it's what on the adjusted gross income, which is what the tax returns for most people, is what the rate is based on.
Okay. Governor Romney has promised to release his 2011 tax returns, this year's tax returns, before the election as soon as they are completed, and the deadline is October 15th. When should we expect them?
You know, I'm not sure, Chris. They're being finalized. There's a lot of forms that have to come in from other entities that the governor doesn't have control over. But people have ample information, as they have last year's tax return, or they'll have the most recent tax return for this year as well. And by the way, you can go onto the website and see personal financial disclosures going back to 2002.
But he is going to release this year's tax return.
Yeah, there'll be 2 years of full tax returns, which, by the way, is consistent with what John McCain did in 2008. It wasn't an issue in 2008 because President Obama wasn't trying to distract from a 4-year-long record of failed policies.
All right, the deadline is October 15th. Yeah. That would be 3 weeks before the election. That would seem to me to be a crazy time to release tax returns. Yeah. So strategically, you got to make a decision when you want to release these tax returns, because you know it will be at least a distraction, if not an attack point, for Democrats.
Sure. Look, October 15 is the deadline for the IRS on an extension. We have said as soon as they're ready, we're going to release them, and I believe they'll be ready before that.
The Friday after the Democratic convention?
I'm not sure when they'll be ready. That's up to certified public accountants, not me.
The president went after the Romney-Ryan tax plan yesterday in his speech in New Hampshire, which he said would cut taxes on the wealthy and raise taxes on the middle class. Let's listen.
His new running mate, Congressman Ryan, he put forward a plan that would let Governor Romney pay less than 1% in taxes each year. Now, and here's the kicker. He expects you to pick up the tab.
Now, the Obama campaign says that under the Ryan plan, Romney would pay only 1% of taxes, because under the Ryan plan, and this is true, it would eliminate all taxes on capital gains, on dividends, and interest. Yeah.
I mean, the Romney-Ryan plan, which is Governor Romney's proposal for tax relief, would allow for people with incomes, households with incomes less than $200,000 to not pay on capital gains and dividend, because we believe that would help foster greater job creation and would help middle-class Americans have higher take-home pay. That's an important need in our economy right now, is to spur job creation, allow for middle-class workers who are living paycheck to paycheck to have higher take-home pay. No, it would not change.
So taxes on capital gains, on interest,
current rate.
So the president, when he talks about the Ryan plan, that part of the plan is inoperative.
Because Mitt Romney is the nominee and Paul Ryan has joined him on the ticket, which we're very glad about. We think it's had a very beneficial effect on the debate and on the ticket. But Paul Ryan is running on Governor Romney's proposals that he put forward in getting and winning the Republican Party nomination. And the fact is that is those are his proposals are to lower capital gains only for those with incomes below $200,000.
So this talk of a 1% tax?
Like everything else, Chris, it's just trying to distract from the reality and the real debate. Look, we had Paul Ryan in Florida yesterday talking about saving Medicare and stopping the raid, the piggy bank, not treating it like a piggy bank. You had Mitt Romney in Ohio and coal country talking about the importance of domestic energy for our economy and for jobs. And what have we had from them? You had Joe Biden in Virginia, thinking he was in North Carolina, talking about putting all back in chains. We had President Obama doing an interview on a morning zoo with morning zoo disc jockeys, talking about what superpower he would have if he were a superhero. We want a serious campaign about real issues that are facing this country. It is time for that. We will win that debate, and that's why they are trying to avoid that debate.
Okay, finally, a couple of questions on running mates. Do you really think you can make Joe Biden an issue in this campaign?
I think the Obama-Biden ticket and their approach.
Yeah, but I'm talking specifically about Joe Biden.
Well, I think Joe Biden makes himself an issue. And, you know, the fact is that when you look at his rhetoric, when you look at the kind of stream of attacks from Joe Biden versus the very serious proposals that are being put forward by Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, I think there's a very informative contrast there between the two tickets and the two approaches.
And looking back at, and it's only the first week, but looking back at this first week, what specifically do you think Paul Ryan has done for your campaign?
I think he has helped reinforce what Mitt Romney wanted, which is a big debate about big issues, elevated the debate. Now, the Obama-Biden campaign is going to continue to try to make this about little things and distractions. But I think the American people realize that we're inviting a serious discussion of the challenges that confront us as a country, putting forward positive solutions. And I think they're going to reject, you know, the fear and smear. It's a shame that the campaign of hope and change has denigrated to one of fear and smear. But I think the American people want to have the bigger debate about the big issues. And look, you know, Paul Ryan has given a real jolt in terms of the number of volunteers who have signed up and contributions coming in online. And you know, he has a relationship with Governor Romney that I think is a very positive one, and I think that they, you know, they're very good together, and I think people see that.
Ed, thank you. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks
for coming in.
Thanks for having me.